side of the microphone from the green light to the speed trap. Ray Garino and Joe D calls them as they seize them, and you better believe them. Here, relevant news, biased opinion, and outright nonsense regarding every aspect of automotive culture. Gasp! With mechanical trickery never before broadcast over FCC-regulated airwaves. Thrilled to the explosive tension as Ray and Joe cuss each other down track, barrel roll across the finish line, laughing at certain disasters as they shake hands from the devil. All that and so much more at high noon this Sunday on the Motormouth Radio Hour. Call in and speak live with the Wizards of Speed and the Live Feed, Ray Garino and Joe D. Bring the whole family. Kids under 12 get in free every Sunday at noon on WHPC. Take the Hempstead Turnpike to the Meadowbrook Parkway and look for the no parking on the expressway and no express service on the Parkway side. Go right on Highway 24 to Garden City. $2 all-day parking includes pit pass.
Here we are. We're in a northbound lane doing a little southbound Suarez today for Rob Leonard, who called this out last week. And I'm Ray Guarino. This is Motormouth Radio. And this guy has krills and Klingons cringing whenever he takes out his scan tool. When he holsters that thing, it's my XO Joe D sitting next to me. How are you?
Hey, Ray, what's happening? Yeah, you gotta watch those guys with the bumpy heads. You know what I mean? Actually, I can kind of get along with most of them at most points, but every once in a while, somebody's S2 graph generator gets a little hinky, and they want it fixed right away. So I tell them, well, go to the end of the line, go over there and talk to go hang out with the Vulcans a little bit and leave me alone.
Exactly. You got that right. So if people want to hang out with these Vulcans, they can give us a call today at 516-572-7440 here on Motormouth Radio. As I've been corrected about, but I'll say Long Island's only automotive talk show who does what we do.
Yes, that's right. And because nobody else has been certified in the nobody else is that certifiable, let's put it that way.
We're certified, all right. So I have to say today, Joe, we're going to cover a little bit of old business because we don't have a guest. We do have one next week, though.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I was going to say, wait a second, did we not open the closet and let him in or something like that? But
no. I know we're going to cover some grounding issues that you have a great story about.
Grounds.
But we're going to go back a little bit. We're going to talk about some carburetor stuff that we've touched on in the past few weeks but didn't have a chance. Right, we didn't have a chance to elaborate on. And actually, our eye in the sky, Jersey Jim, has asked if I could please elaborate on how we go about definitely defining and sourcing out these carburetors. The thing is, I talked about this on the Thursday night Plane and Traffic show with Lou Santiago, and I was a little more in detail on that show because I had some time to do it. We didn't have the time here, but in the past week, well, actually, it was you who instituted it. You threw at me.
What else? What else is new? If it's trouble, who's going to start it? It's going to be me. Yeah.
Well, this wasn't particularly trouble, but you threw at me a box last week and said, "Here, can you rebuild this?" And I said, "Yes, I can." It was a Holley, what I thought was a 3310 at the time, but it's a 4150.
You base it the Swiss Army knife of carburetors that just about everybody who's ever owned a Holley carburetor or any kind of high performance car bigger than like a 6-cylinder, and even some of them, everybody's used the 3310, the good old 780. Yep,
that's right.
That was original equipment on a lot of Chevys. I know. It turns out a lot of cars.
Oh, absolutely. So what I did is I took the carburetor home and said, "Yeah, sure. I haven't done a Holley in a while. This is going to be like old home week for me." And I took it apart. Well, before I took it apart, I noticed that and anybody who knows a Holley carburetor, Google Holley 4-barrel, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yes.
There's a couple different configurations. The 600 has a single fuel inlet on the left side of the carburetor, which is the driver's side. Mm-hmm. But the 3310 style, which uses 2 metering plates instead of a metering block in the back, is what's called a dual feed. That could be a dual feed as well, which means on the right side of the carburetor, there's this nice chrome pipe that goes into the 2 fuel fittings that are on each of the fuel bowls. And then that goes to the filter and the fuel pump. So I noticed on this carburetor there was a solid piece of tubing, like
very funky, steampunky.
Yeah. Not like 3/16. It was almost 1/4 inch, and it went between the fuel lines. And I said, and I knew this had been off a car for a long time. You could tell by looking at it. It was dry. It was dusty. it was definitely, sitting.
All right, wait, are you talking about me? You're talking about the carburetor now?
The carburetor.
Oh, okay.
So with that, I said, okay, maybe someone put this line on here and bent it up to keep dust and dirt and moisture out of the carburetor.
Right.
Until I turned and saw on the front fuel bowl on the driver's side, which would be the left side, I saw a fuel filter, a fitting, which had a number on it.
That old school Ford filter and fitting in one shot that they used quite a bit of in the 60s and 70s. Yes.
And I said, "Oh, I have never seen this before," which now led to the information dissemination process.
Yes.
And on the air horn of the Holleys, they always have the history
that's where you got to look.
The birth certificate.
Mm-hmm.
This one said DOZF. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, it's a Ford carburetor. It is an original Ford carburetor.
1970 DO.
Now, and how I know that is because all the listings, all the carburetors I looked up, the Fords always had the DOZ and DOZX listings. So I'm like, okay, this is an original carburetor. Scratch head a little bit. Then I look up the numbers. There's a list number 4514, which I wasn't familiar with. It is a 4150 style carburetor, and then a date code. So what do? This is what Jim had asked. How do you do it? Well, I use things like these, Joe.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's hold it a little closer to the mic.
Yeah,
good old Holley Carburetor numerical listing.
Right, and the other one is
and the other one is the installated parts and specs book.
Right.
Yes, these when I worked in the speed shop, both of these were well worn and right towards the front of my catalog because I used them quite a bit. Yep,
absolutely.
And this is the kind of stuff when you want to get the authoritative information, that's where you got to go. Although in a case like that, you might have been able to go to the shop manual for that particular vehicle.
If I had it, which I didn't.
Yeah, right. No, of course. Yeah.
But I did go to the Car Guys Universal Shop Manual. It was called the Google.
The Google, yes.
Google in any one of those numbers, and you get everything you need to know. Mm-hmm. And that's what I got. And that's
absolutely no picture of anybody in a bikini.
No, unfortunately not. That's how I found that this thing was a 1970 carburetor off a Ford, possibly off a Cobra Jet, off a Cobra Jet engine.
Right.
428, 429 series. And
Torino, Mustang, yeah.
Oh, that's why that's why it's got all this. And then I looked at the images section of Google, and there it was with that solid fuel line. And I'm like, I've never, ever seen one of these. Well, I'm not a Ford guy, first of all.
Right.
In all the carburetors I've rebuilt, I guess nobody ever had anything this cool.
Right. A little bit of backstory on that. That carburetor and the engine that it sat in is in a 1956 sedan delivery, what Ford used to call a Courier. So picture a Ford station wagon of the 1956 era, but the panel, no windows, kind of almost nomadish.
Yes.
Two-door, you know what I mean? And it's sitting in the UD. Where it's been sitting for an extremely long length of time. We dragged it over. Because the owner of the car wanted to get it up and running again. Mm-hmm. So, and we were looking at this and go, what the heck motor is this? So there is a lot of jury rigging because, it's a 56 Ford, which would have had maybe a 312 or a 292 or something like that. But meanwhile, there's a Ford FE, typical Ford late 60s, early 70s, big block in there. And
which happened a lot back in the day.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I mean, whoever owned this car back in the day was pretty cool. Whoever, it's got a stick. It was no joke. As a matter of fact, I can't wait to hear this thing run.
Now, let's step back. Also in the UD, of course, Dougie. What's his partner in crimes? Is it John?
Johnny? Yeah, his other half, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, he's got a Chevelle.
Yes.
And what's under the hood of that Chevelle?
Forgive me, Doug. It starts with a P.
It starts with a P. It's a Pontiac. I think it's I think it may be a 389 with tri-power. Mm-hmm. And when I looked at that thing, I'm like, oh, who did this? Yeah. And he told me a story of how that engine came out of a wagon back in the day. It was crashed on the LIE. It was a friend, the whole thing. And I'll throw it in the Chevelle. And I'm like, how cool is that? People put Chevys in Pontiacs all the time. I even did that.
Oh, yeah, that was the thing. I mean, even when we went to the car show last week over in Eisenhower Park, we ran into a couple of 1960s Pontiacs that had Chevy motors in them. You know what I mean? So
not many guys went the other way.
It was a thing. It's easier. Somebody always had a Chevy motor laying around someplace out of some station wagon, Impala, Caprice, whatever. They got crashed and they pulled it out just in case they needed needed a motor because, you can get parts on that thing almost literally on every street corner.
Well, it's like I say, if you need a set of piston rings or a lifter, just go to 7-Eleven. They have them on the shelf next to the
seriously,
ding-dongs and ho-hos.
Yeah, the carburetor stuff's a little tough, though. That you have to go to the pharmacy for.
We should talk about that a little bit because you did procure the carburetor kit.
Oh, yes.
I've talked about this offline quite a lot, but on the show, how carburetor kits now have become unobtainium.
Yes. Well, first of all, nobody wants to stock them because, I still get plenty of questions during the course of my week relating to some carburetor kit or another. And, because there are hardcore carburetor people still out there in the country that, between classic cars and people who just don't want to give them up and farm implements and stuff like that they're out there, they're still doing carburetors.
Sure.
And
guys like us.
Yeah, exactly. Except that this thing here, because it was an original equipment carburetor, we couldn't necessarily use, you could probably throw something together from a series of the more generic Holley kits that you would find in the speed shop. But my logic was, when I dug that up, was let's get the right kit because there might be a little, funny little G's clips and whatever.
I'll tell you this: after rebuilding it, I could have gone to and I did go to my spare parts selection at my house for a part for that carburetor, because what's not included in the high grade kit is the diaphragm for the for the secondary.
Oh, yeah, okay.
They never include that. That's one I think I said that to you.
It's considered a non-wear item.
The AED kit that I had gotten from, I think it was ATV,
right,
sold out years ago. It's a line of carburetor kits. They included the vacuum secondary diaphragm, which is fantastic, and a bunch of other little things the other kits didn't. So I went to my spare parts, and I went in. I had 3 of them that I had saved, and I put a good one in because the other one just decrepitated.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, well, that car sat...
That's another word for Jim to use on the
yes, decrepitated, yes, one of my favorites. That car sat, that we know of, 7 years.
The beauty of it was, when it came apart, cars, it looked like it had never seen MTBE or ethanol because you get that weird gelatinous stuff. Everything in there was very just dry and dusty.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful.
It was like Tales from the Crypt over there.
Beautiful. That stuff cleans up wonderfully.
The fuel system, the rest of the fuel system on that stuff, when we tried to get the car started the first time, nothing worked. The tank looked like the lunar surface over there. We stuck a borescope down in there. And the fuel pump, that was, next to the dictionary, there's the picture for decrepitated, there's a picture of this fuel pump.
Right.
It wasn't doing no pumping no more.
No.
So, and then the carburetor, when we tried an alternative fuel source, that carburetor just had more leaks than City Field at the 7th inning stretch.
It was all dried out.
Yeah, so it was pretty bad. So, and trying to find the right kit, though, it was on like galactic back order.
Yeah,
And
it was nothing special. The replacement parts in that carburetor are the gaskets,
right,
between the metering block and the bowl, and the metering block and the body.
Yeah, some of the rubber seals, power valve.
There's a little cork O-ring that goes between the vacuum canister and the body. Of course, the needle and seat assembly that has an O-ring on it. That's
right,
replacement.
Right.
You reuse the float, brass floats, center hung brass.
Center hung,
floats.
yes. Well, Holley needle and seats. You walk over to a Holley carburetor and you said, "Word, dirt down the intake," and the next thing you know, it's like spouting like a fountain as they hang up.
The next thing that got me on that was toward the end, in the end game, after I cleaned it in a carburetor solution I have, which is in an agitator. I gave it an extra long cleaning and soak because of that decrepitation, which it needed. Unfortunately, whatever was left of that bronze-like look of the carburetor literally came off with the brush when I brushed it. So now we're down to bare aluminum. And again, thinking of the rarity of this carburetor, I had mentioned to you, maybe this is time to use the paint I had gotten from Eastwood.
From Eastwood, yeah.
And the second choice was just a light coating of a semi-gloss clear.
Yeah, just something
so
to turn that chalky stuff there.
And that's what we chose to go with. So
right, yeah. Well, this car at least at this point in its life is hardly a showpiece.
Right.
Our mission that we decided to accept was to get the car to be driven around. I had a list that went on for about 5 pages of stuff that I wanted to do to the car before I would let it out on the street, with me or anybody I really liked.
Oh, sure.
But
I'm sure brakes was toward the top of that list.
Yes, absolutely. Because I'm a big fan of converting brakes over to, at the very least, dual
Oh, yeah.
Dual systems because it's not the dark ages no more. And this is hardly a points car for originality, nothing like that. But no, basically this car is going to drive out of the UD. It's going to drive